In the endless dust seas of Carthon Secundus, where the sun is a dying ember and the wind howls through the shattered domes of ancient mining cities, something stirs beneath the crust. They call themselves the Burrowborn, though no soul remembers birthing them. These cultists wear their heritage like armor, skin like coal dust, hard and leathery from the tunnels, and carapaces gleaming in the yellow ochre of their ancestral truth. Their veins throb with a silent pulse, ancient, subterranean, patient, a lineage as old as the stone they dig. The Burrowborn do not march, they emerge, erupting from substructures, tunnels and forgotten mine shafts with seismic fury. To them, the patriarch is the deep womb, the seed beneath, a god of pressure and hunger, whispering from the cavernous dark. They do not worship the stars. They worship the slow, certain encroachment, the buried truth, the hunger that always comes from below. When they rise, there is no warning, only the trembling ground, the scream of stone cutters turned to weapons, and the yellow flash of chitin before the dark engulfs all. But there is something deeply unsettling about them. The Burrowborn do not bear the muted violet blue hues common among Genestealer cults long cut off from their progenitor. Instead, the chitin gleams in a stark yellow, a mark few dare to interpret, a color tied to a presence some hoped had passed into myth. To those who understand, the meaning is clear. The time is coming. It must be. I began shaping the visual identity of my Burrowborn army with an acolyte hybrid wielding a heavy rock cutter, a striking model whose insectile tool perfectly captures the cult's subterranean existence. Its chitinous limbs provide ample space for the rich yellow of Highfleet German Gander, while the deep, almost black skin invites expressive contrast. And of course, no Burrowborn would feel complete without a sense of depth and a quiet presence lurking just beyond the light. I primed the model with Mechanicus Standard Grey, an ideal foundation for both the bright yellow and the darker skin tones. I began with the latter using Black Templar contrast and a relatively fine brush. I deliberately applied the paint in streaks, taking advantage of the long drying time to blend in yellowish patches and transitions. Acolyte hybrids aren't pure Tyranids, so their skin shouldn't appear biologically perfect. I imagine their flesh as a tangled merging of different tissues, and by mixing these contrasting tones, I try to reflect that unsettling, unnatural fusion. At a later stage, I decided to give the skin even more depth and character by using one of my all-time favorite techniques, stippling. I started with Corvus Black as the darkest tone, dotting the back of the head with fine specks. Then I gradually mixed yellow into the black and continued stippling across other areas of the head, creating a gradient of tiny dots that eventually covered most of it. I also added some subtle stippling around the mouth to suggest texture and organic irregularity. To finish off the skin, I added a layer of transparency by applying a light wash of Soul Blight Grey. This gave the impression of a thin, almost translucent layer resting over the dark flesh beneath, adding subtle nuance and complexity. You might recognize this technique from one of my previous videos. With the skin complete, I moved on to the rest of the base colors. For the chitinous armor, I chose a strong yellow, Avalon Sunset, bold enough to contrast with the skin and catch the eye. For the armor plates, I used Rhinox hide, a deep brown that adds a sense of weight and wear. The trousers were painted with Dark Reaper, a cool, desaturated blue-gray that keeps the tone grounded. The heavy rock cutter was base coated with Iron Warriors, a dark metallic that suits its industrial function. As a touch of color, I used McCrack blue for the ribbons. A small detail, but one that adds a nice spot of cool contrast against all the earth tones. For the organic parts, the tongue, the mouth and the claws, I went with Gal Warback Red, a rich and fleshy tone that ties them all together. This is a cult that spends most of its existence underground. They likely care little for the appearance or colors of their tools, so I kept the rock cutter's metal fairly uniform, though I couldn't resist adding a few accents in Warpfield bronze. Once all the base layers were dry, I gave the entire model a generous coat of Agrex Earthshade to unify the palette. After drying, I turned my attention to the rock cutter. This is the only part of the model where I used dry brushing before the base. Since the underlying tones were already dark, a light pass with Ironbreaker was enough to brighten out the depth and texture I wanted. Then I returned to the chitin. I began layering up yellow tones on the chitinous arms. Over time I've come to embrace an approach I think of as selective painting, deliberately drawing the eye to specific areas through richer detail and color contrast, while letting other parts fade into supporting roles. As you may have noticed in this video, I tend to give more attention to the skin and chitin than to other areas like the pants. It's a way of guiding attention, not unlike the idea of selective focus in photography, where sharpness and blur are used to shape the viewer's perception. For final highlight, I use an acrylic paint marker, close in color to Dawn Yellow, quick, precise and effective. The mining lamp was painted with a warm red glow, for which I used Mephiston red. I then applied the same color to the eyes, or rather the lenses of the goggles. Afterwards I mixed Mephiston red with some leftover Gal Warback red on my palette. This mixture served as a highlight tone for the tongue and claws. To finish off the glow of the mining lamp and the goggles, I added a subtle highlight by mixing Mephiston red with a touch of white. To be honest, I forgot to film this step, but you can see the finished effect in this frontal still. To give the tongue a wet, fleshy appearance, I needed to build up additional layers, so I added pink horror to the mix and eventually applied it pure for the final highlights, before I mixed in some white scar for the wet, glossy look of the tongue. This marked the completion of the Acolyte Hybrid's paint job. Naturally, a model with such presence calls for a base that grounds it in its world, something that evokes the cavernous depths of the mining cities beneath Carthan Secundus. I settled on a texture that feels earthy, tunnel damp and crusted with grit. And with the completion of this Acolyte Hybrid, we've only just begun to uncover the secrets buried deep within the world of the Burrowborn cult. This is the first step on a journey through strange new stories and creations, a canvas waiting to be filled with imagination and possibility. Whether I choose to explore the Burrowborn further or introduce other mysterious cults, I'm excited to see where this creative path leads. And who knows, maybe some of your ideas will inspire what comes next. Thank you for watching and being part of this adventure. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep painting and keep bringing the unseen to light.